This slam poem is in response to House Bill 1775 that restricts what teachers can teach about racism, sexism, and discrimination. To my Oklahoma students, this is my last year as a teacher, and before I leave the school building for the final time, I have a message for you. A message from me and a message from your Oklahoma governor. Your governor wants me to tell you that no one race or sex is inherently superior to another race or sex. I want you to remember that every time you witness racism or sexism around you. I want you to remember that racism does not exist because one race is superior to another. It exists because one race created a racist system to be racist. I want you to remember that sexism does not exist because one sex is superior to another. It exists because one sex created a sexist system to be sexist. Your governor wants me to tell you that no individual, by virtue of his or her race or sex, is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. I want you to remember that no one is born racist, sexist, or oppressive. Racism and sexism are learned traits. I want you to remember that we learn these traits from a racist and sexist system that permeates our society, even when we don't realize we are learning them. I want you to remember that what can be learned can be unlearned, and it is incumbent upon us to rid ourselves of the sexist and racist biases we have acquired over the course of our lifetimes. Your governor wants me to tell you that no individual should be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment solely or partly because of his or her race or sex. I want you to remember that if you are discriminated against for your race or sex, it is your right to protest this treatment, to petition the government, and to demand that the system be changed. I want you to remember that you should never be afraid to be seen and be heard. Anytime the government treats people of your race or sex differently than it treats those who command the most political power in our society. I want you to remember to demand laws that protect you and always take up as much space as you have to until society stops ignoring your cries for equality. Your governor wants me to tell you that members of one race or sex cannot and should not attempt to treat others without respect to race or sex. I want you to remember that a colorblind and sex-blind society is a goal to aspire to, but is far from our current reality. I want you to remember that a colorblind society doesn't result in only 7 black billionaires out of the richest 451 people in this country. I want you to remember that a sex-blind society doesn't result in only 24 female senators when women make up more than 50% of the population. Your governor wants me to tell you that no individual's moral character is necessarily determined by his or her race or sex. I want you to remember that your moral character is a choice, and you can choose to not be racist or sexist. I want you to remember that it is your decision on whether or not you sit idly by as your peers are mistreated due to their sex, race, or other reasons. I want you to remember that you have the ability to be the hero and use what limited power you have to fight for the rights of strangers that look nothing like you. Your governor wants me to tell you that no individual, by virtue of his or her race or sex, bears responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members of the same sex or race. I want you to remember that you are not responsible for things that happened before you were born. I want you to remember that the institutions built upon a racist and sexist past still affect our society today. I want you to remember that you are responsible for ignoring the injustice that happens around you. Your governor wants me to tell you that no individual should feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress on account of his or her race or sex. I want you to remember that the racist and sexist sins of the past were not performed by you, and you should not feel guilty about what has happened. I want you to remember that no one should feel guilty or feel bad about their sex or their race. Take pride in who you are. I want you to remember that no one needs you to feel bad about your race or your sex. What people need is for you to choose to stand up to oppression. Your governor wants me to tell you that meritocracy and traits such as a hard work ethic are not racist or sexist, and they were not created by members of a particular race to oppress members of another race. I want you to remember that a meritocracy is an ideal in America that has yet to be realized. I want you to remember that a hard work ethic is a path to success when you find an employer that will adequately compensate you for your contribution towards their success. I want you to remember that there is nothing gained by your family if your work ethic compels you to sacrifice your health for a business that won't pay you for the years of your life that it extorts from your lifespan. Students, I want you to remember that your Oklahoma lawmakers have decided it is not the duty of your schools or universities to teach you about diversity. I want you to remember that your Oklahoma lawmakers have decided that it is up to you to learn how the system is unfair to your friends, relatives, and neighbors, and it is up to you to learn how to change the system on their behalf. Most of all, students, I want you to remember that I care about what happens to you in life, and I will always attempt to be your ally and an advocate for change in a system that is stacked against you.